The wind tore at the hem of her old coat, flinging it against the empty streets of the small Wyoming town, carrying with it the fragile threads of hope she clung to for a new life. Each board beneath her feet creaked and groaned, whispering warnings of the challenges ahead. The crowd rushed past, absorbed in their own concerns, leaving Mabel alone with a small suitcase containing her fears, her hopes, and the last remnants of the life she had left behind. The departing train left a low, resonant roar that swallowed all other sounds. She scanned the crowd for a familiar face, but found only strangers, their expressions unreadable and distant. Her heart tightened, and for the first time in months of solitude, Mabel realized that freedom was not only liberation, but a trial demanding courage and resolve. Suddenly, a boy emerged from the throng, his wide, wary eyes locking on hers. He ran toward her with an intensity that seemed almost magnetic, as if fate itself had drawn him to her side. That moment became a hook, an instant that captured attention and held it, a sign that even in a world where no one waits, life could intervene, shifting the path of those who dared to move forward. The wind mingled with the scent of rusted iron and dust, curling through the platform and along the worn wooden beams of the station. Mabel felt the weight of the town pressing in, the strange, silent observers in the windows, the clatter of carts and distant whistles shaping the scene into a living backdrop. She moved deliberately, each step measured, each breath taken in rhythm with the restless energy around her. Her suitcase bumped against her leg with each careful stride, a small, constant reminder of the life she carried with her. The boy slowed as he reached her side, tentative but determined, glancing toward the horizon as if seeking permission to remain. Mabel's eyes followed the direction of his gaze, taking in the sprawling streets, the faint hills beyond the town, and the patches of dry prairie stretching toward the distant mountains. Every element seemed alive with anticipation, the empty spaces holding possibilities both frightening and promising.
She adjusted the strap of her suitcase, feeling the weight of her own resolve settling like armor across her shoulders. The platform felt endless, the wind pressing against her like a reminder that every journey began with a single uncertain step. She could sense the world unfolding before her, fragile and unpredictable. And yet in that uncertainty lay the first promise of something new. Mabel moved forward, drawing the boy along beside her, their steps synchronized with the rhythm of the town and the restless prairie beyond. The clamor of movement, the hiss of the wind, the distant calls of merchants and travelers merged into a pulse that carried her onward. Each moment of waiting had ended. Each step became an act of defiance against the loneliness she had carried for so long. And in the swirl of dust and iron and wind, she felt the first spark of her story igniting.
The station, with its worn boards and fading paint, the wind that tore at her coat, and the boy's determined pace, all coalesced into a scene that felt alive, urgent, and full of possibility. Mabel's gaze swept over the horizon once more, and she understood that this moment, standing on the threshold of a new life, was the beginning not just of a journey across the land, but of a transformation within herself. The future waited, untamed and wide, and she was stepping into it with every careful, deliberate step. Narrow streets, lined with low, weathered buildings and cracked cobblestones, felt both alien and alive. Mabel moved cautiously along the gravel road, each step echoing and creaking beneath her boots. The boy walked close beside her, alert and measured, as if testing each movement for danger before committing to the next. Every new corner and alley presented a trial. The noisy shops and bakeries, rich with the scent of freshly baked bread and roasted meat, offered no comfort. In her chest, a gnawing sense of fragility grew, a realization that safety was often an illusion. The prairie wind swept through the town, whipping grass and rattling shutters, while birds cried low and sharp, intensifying the tension and creating an atmosphere in which every second seemed vital. Mabel trained her eyes on every detail. She watched the shifting shadows, the way carts rolled across the uneven streets, the subtle gestures of townsfolk moving with hurried purpose. Each flicker of movement, each clatter of a loose sign became a signal she could read. She discerned patterns, predicting where threat might appear, measuring risk in the tremor of a step or the flash of an eye. The boy mirrored her caution, learning from the way she moved, instinct blending with observation.
The wind carried dust and the faint scent of wood smoke from distant chimneys. It tugged at her coat and ruffled her hair, a constant reminder that the town was alive with forces beyond her control. She felt herself tightening, a coiled readiness. Yet, at the same time, a strange exhilaration pulsed through her veins. Each challenge, each uncertainty, was shaping her, forging a resilience she hadn't known she possessed. The streets twisted and turned, leading them past shuttered doors and small squares where merchants called out and wagons clattered over stone. Mabel noted the exits, the vantage points, the places where danger could approach unseen. The boy's small hand brushed hers as they paused to watch a shadow slip past an alley. She felt a protective surge, a determination to shield him, to navigate this unfamiliar place and emerge unscathed. Time seemed to stretch, each footfall a heartbeat in a tense rhythm. Mabel learned to breathe with the environment, to anticipate its noises and silences, to merge her awareness with the pulse of the town. The world around her became a living map of potential perils and fleeting opportunities, each step forward a delicate negotiation with chance.
Through narrow lanes and open squares, past stray dogs and carts loaded with goods, they pressed onward. Every glimpse of a figure, every gust of wind across the rooftops, every distant whistle of a train reminded Mabel that she was in a place both fragile and dangerous. Yet amid the tension, there was a fragile hope. The boy's presence, the connection forming between them, and the sense that together they could navigate the uncertainty that surrounded them. The city streets unfolded like a test, each moment thick with anticipation, each step building toward the unknown. Mabel's awareness sharpened, her senses attuned to the subtle shifts in the world around her. With the boy beside her, she began to understand that survival demanded both vigilance and courage. The challenge lay not just in the dangers of the streets, but in mastering the fear that threatened to paralyze her, turning each passing shadow into a lesson in resilience and determination. On the outskirts of the town, Mabel discovered a small house with darkened wood and creaking floors. It was simple, almost humble, yet it offered a chance to build something of her own. For the first time in months, she felt a flicker of purpose, a sense that she could be needed and valued. The air carried the scent of dry grass and dust, mingling with the faint smoke from distant chimneys, and the quiet rhythm of the place pressed a gentle insistence into her mind that a life could be rebuilt here. Caleb Warren, a man of middle years, with sharp, attentive eyes, noticed her presence and offered help without insistence or expectation. Mabel felt the weight of her solitude lighten, realizing that she did not have to face every challenge alone. The prairie stretched out around them, the wind whispering through the tall grass, carrying a quiet energy that mirrored her tentative hope. Sunsets burned along the horizon in streaks of gold and crimson, framing the town and fields as if the world itself acknowledged the new beginning forming within her. Each day became a series of small rituals that strengthened trust and connection,
She swept the floors, arranged the furniture, and tended to the few garden patches, learning the contours of the house as if mapping out a sanctuary. Caleb's steady presence offered guidance without control, and the boy mirrored her movements, picking up the rhythms of care and observation. Every chore, every glance toward the horizon, every step along the worn paths around the home became a thread weaving them together into a fragile but growing network of family. The sounds of the town seemed distant here, replaced by the low rustle of grass and the occasional clatter of a wagon along the road. Birds called overhead, and the wind shifted constantly, carrying both warmth and warning. Mabel's senses tuned to every movement, every subtle change, as she learned to read the environment not as a threat, but as a partner in her survival and renewal. Caleb's quiet efficiency and the boy's tentative curiosity became anchors in this new life, each day building layers of security and familiarity.
Evenings stretched long, filled with chores, preparation, and observation. Mabel paused at the threshold of the house often, watching the sun dip behind distant hills, feeling the stillness settle around them. The space transformed under their hands, the rooms carrying the scent of cooked meals and clean wood, the walls echoing with footsteps that now belonged together. In these moments, the town and the prairie felt less like strangers and more like companions, shaping the rhythm of their days and the texture of their emerging trust. By the end of each day, Mabel felt a subtle shift within herself. Anxiety loosened its grip just enough to let connection grow, and the weight of loneliness receded in the warmth of shared effort. The boy laughed quietly, while Caleb moved methodically through the tasks, a silent promise of stability that she could finally begin to rely upon. In this small house, surrounded by wind and sun, Mabel sensed the formation of something lasting, a foundation on which courage and care could stand, and the realization that she was no longer entirely alone in the world.
The past arrived in the town in the form of a man who had once shattered her life. His presence cast a shadow over the streets, each step echoing like a silent warning. Mabel felt the fragility of her newfound life, aware that every detail, every gesture could become decisive in protecting the family she was slowly forming. Each day became a ritual of preparation. She reinforced the doors and windows of the house, scanning the surroundings for movement, reading the subtle shifts in neighbors' behavior. Caleb Warren moved with steady assurance beside her, observing and calculating, offering guidance without pressure. The wind shifted constantly, carrying the scent of rain and the dry grass of the prairie, brushing against the house and rattling loose shingles, while clouds gathered low, hinting at a storm that mirrored the tension coiling in Mabel's chest. The boy learned quickly, mirroring Mabel's careful movements, noticing the slightest changes in the environment, the flicker of shadow, the sound of a distant horse. He became both student and companion, his small body moving with cautious precision, yet his presence offered comfort and a tangible reminder of the stakes she was defending. Every glance, every step together reinforced the connection between them, a silent pact of trust and vigilance. Mabel's senses sharpened with each passing hour. She could read the distant sound of carts on uneven cobblestones, the low rustle of grass at the edge of the property, the pattern of birds' calls. Each signal became part of a map in her mind, a network of warnings and opportunities that allowed her to anticipate danger before it arrived. Caleb's quiet observation and methodical actions provided structure to her instincts,
giving her both a model and a partner in this precarious vigilance. The wind swept across the prairie, bending the tall grass in waves and carrying dust and loose leaves across the property. Shadows lengthened as the sun fell behind distant hills, painting the house and its small yard in tones of amber and gray. Mabel paused frequently, taking in the movement of clouds and the subtle shifts in light, sensing the approach of a storm, both outside and within. Each day was a rehearsal, a training in anticipation and preparation, and with every routine, she felt a measure of control returning. Evenings became moments of quiet reflection and silent assessment. The boy played at a cautious distance, practicing the vigilance he had learned, while Caleb moved methodically through tasks around the house. Mabel watched them, feeling the tension of the past pressing against her, and the strength of the bond they were building together. In this fragile equilibrium, every sound and movement carried meaning. Every action strengthened the connection that made them resilient against the uncertainty looming over their lives. Mabel understood that the storm was not only outside the walls of her home, but inside as well. Each preparation, each cautious glance, and each shared moment with Caleb and the boy was a step towards safeguarding their fragile sanctuary. The past had returned to test them, but the unity forming within the small house, shaped by trust, vigilance, and shared care, gave her hope that together they could meet whatever challenges were coming. Mabel made the decision to act. She stopped waiting and began to use every resource at her disposal, relying on Caleb Warren and the boy as allies she could trust. The house transformed under their care, walls becoming a sanctuary, doors reinforced, and windows carefully watched. Every corner, every shadow, was scanned with purpose, turning the small dwelling into a fortress against the uncertainties pressing from outside. Their little group moved in quiet coordination, each aware of the other's movements, learning to anticipate threats, to cover each other, and to hold fast against the invisible dangers of the town and prairie beyond. The prairie stretched outward in waves of golden grass, touched by the low sun as it sank toward the horizon. Sunset painted the skies in vivid reds and ambers, casting long shadows across the yard, while the wind shifted and brought the faint, heavy scent of rain.
Mabel felt the tension of the environment pressing against her senses, yet within it, a strange reassurance arose. Every gust of wind, every distant bird call, every subtle movement in the tall grass became both a warning and a sign that her vigilance was keeping them safe. The contrasts of danger and shelter, threat and warmth intertwined, drawing her focus and sharpening her instincts. Inside the house, the tasks of protection became almost ritual. Doors were checked, supplies organized, and lookout positions subtly adjusted. Caleb moved with deliberate calm, his eyes scanning the property and beyond, while the boy mirrored Mabel's careful movements, practicing alertness and understanding the rhythm of safety. Each action reinforced trust, a silent acknowledgement that their strength lay in unity. The wind rattled the shingles, the shadows of branches swayed against the walls, and Mabel felt the pulse of the house as a living thing, connected to their shared determination. The interplay of light and shadow, of wind and silence, created a tension that both frightened and energized her. Each moment held the possibility of intrusion, yet each act of preparation strengthened her confidence. She moved through the rooms and yard like a conductor of a delicate orchestra,
coordinating the household, the boy, and Caleb into a rhythm of readiness. Even in the quiet pauses, she maintained awareness, knowing that the smallest lapse could shift the balance. As dusk deepened, the prairie beyond the town seemed to hold its breath. Mabel walked the perimeter, noting every subtle change in the air, every unfamiliar sound, every movement at the edges of vision. The boy followed her, alert and careful, while Caleb remained calm, a steady presence that allowed her to push her own boundaries. Together, they built a network of observation, of defense, of shared courage that turned fear into action. By the time the sun finally disappeared, leaving a sky streaked with violet and deep orange, Mabel felt a surge of resolve. The house was fortified, their routines set, and the trio had become a team capable of facing whatever might come. The interplay of threat and sanctuary, danger and hope held the viewer's attention, each detail a hook, each breath a measure of suspense. In the fading light, Mabel understood that safety was fragile but achievable, and that courage, vigilance, and unity were the tools she would wield to protect those she had come to care for.
The danger had passed. Mabel stood on the edge of the prairie, her eyes tracing the horizon where the sky met the distant hills. The boy ran freely across the open meadow, laughter carrying on the gentle wind, and Caleb Warren remained near, a steady presence beside her. The house behind them, now filled with the warmth of shared effort and care, felt like more than shelter. It was home. Mabel sensed that she had found not only a place, but a family, a bond forged through trials, vigilance, and the quiet strength of shared trust. The wind swept across the grass in soft waves, carrying the scent of earth and the faint promise of rain. The sunset painted the sky in shades of gold, crimson, and violet, reflecting the calm that had settled over the land and within her own chest. Shadows lengthened across the yard, stretching toward the hills, yet the stillness felt protective, as if the prairie itself acknowledged the hard-won peace. Each movement, each sound, each breath was a reminder of the balance they had achieved, fragile yet enduring.
Mabel watched the boy stumble and rise again, his small figure moving with confidence across the field. Caleb's eyes followed them both, steady and watchful, yet relaxed, a silent assurance that their lives could now unfold without constant fear. She realized that the past, though never fully gone, no longer dictated the rhythm of her days. Every gust of wind, every ripple of grass, every bird's call seemed to mark a new beginning, a life where courage, love, and trust could coexist with freedom. The routines they had established, the care of the home, the observation of the surrounding land, the small rituals of connection, had grown into something sustaining. Mabel felt the tension of constant alertness ease into a quiet vigilance, a readiness that no longer carried the weight of dread. Each sunset, each evening wind, and each flicker of light over the hills became a marker of continuity, a reminder that their shared choices had shaped a world worth protecting.
She walked slowly toward Caleb, feeling the soft earth beneath her boots, the familiar weight of the boy's hand in hers. The prairie stretched endlessly around them, open and unthreatening, yet full of possibility. In that moment, the future appeared vast and uncharted, inviting rather than intimidating. Mabel breathed in the calm, letting it fill her chest, letting the knowledge of safety and belonging settle like sunlight across her shoulders. The story drew to a close with the soft certainty of a day ending peacefully.
A new life had been carved from uncertainty, built on trust, courage, and the quiet devotion of those who had chosen to stand together. Mabel knew that the past was behind her, that the future lay wide open, and that she could embrace it fully. And as the wind carried the last light of sunset across the prairie, a gentle invitation lingered in the air to join Dust and Devotion tales, to witness the journeys of people learning to live, to love, and to fight, no matter the trials they faced.